Today on the Rise of the Challenge podcast.
I definitely, growing up, that's like all I knew is small town Iowa, like what else is really out there type of thing. So growing up, I just didn't know any different. But after I graduated from the University of Iowa, I moved to Boston for a year. Now I'm down in Austin, Texas. And having those experiences have really like kind of shaped my mind of like, oh, wow, there's like so much more in the world, like such a different like cultures, experiences, perspectives.
Welcome to the Rise of the Challenge podcast. Joining today, he's a type 1 diabetic and entrepreneur. It's Ryan Atkinson. How are you doing today, Ryan?
Good. Super excited to be here today. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Excited to talk with you about type 1 diabetes, entrepreneurship, and so much. So yeah, thank you for the opportunity.
We're so excited to have you on the show to talk about your Rise to the Challenge. What we like to do with all of our guests is go right to the beginning. Talk about where you're from and what you like doing growing up.
Yeah, so I'm originally from a small town in north central Iowa called Clear Lake. We're about a town of 10,000 people. My graduating class was 53. So to kind of put that in perspective about how small we really were. So yeah, I was born and raised there. What I like to do growing up, I was like all things sports. I wish I would have done a little bit more growing up, like the band or something, or kind of get out of just sports. But yeah, I was all football, basketball, soccer a little bit as well. So anything active, anything outside, anything with friends. Clear Lake's also a lake town, so anything on the lake during the summer. So yeah, those are some of the things that I like to do growing up. Some of the things I still like to do. Anything outside, I'm usually having a smile on my face.
Which of those sports was your favorite or the one that you really you excelled at?
Yeah, so I would probably say football was my best sport. I would probably say that was my most favorite to play as well. Basketball was basketball growing up was probably my favorite until like junior or senior year. I just really enjoyed basketball growing up, but I definitely excelled at football, probably above all the other sports I played. So I would go football.
What was the position you played in football?
Yeah. So when you're in a town of 10,000, a graduating class of 53, you play a lot of different positions and you play both ways. So my senior year, I played tight end, defensive tackle, and wide receiver. So I kind of moved around quite a bit my senior year.
So either side you were on, offensive or defensive, you're just basically getting hit at this point.
Oh, for sure.
No matter what.
Yeah. I definitely do not miss how sore I was after some games. There are quite a few memories in my brain of just hits that I took that like, oh, it put me back like definitely a few weeks or so. But that's kind of thing. It was Clear Lake was a lot of like toughness, like battle through it type of thing. So I did not miss a game ever in any sport, but I definitely played through like sprained ankles, like probably a sprained knee, probably a bruised back. I played through bruised ribs one times. Yeah, it was kind of brutal looking, but I don't know how I did it, but yeah, it definitely molded me, but it's a good thing for sure.
Growing up in a small town with the size of 10,000, was it kind of nice having that kind of small atmosphere community compared to larger cities where every day you maybe don't see the same person?
Yeah, that's a great question. I go back and forth on this actually quite a bit. I definitely, growing up, that's like all I knew is small town Iowa, like what else is really out there type of thing. So growing up, I just didn't know any different. But after I graduated from the University of Iowa, I moved to Boston for a year. Now I'm down in Austin, Texas. And having those experiences have really like kind of shaped my mind of like, oh, wow, there's like so much more in the world, like such a different like cultures, experiences, perspectives, and all of that. So I'm very grateful that I grew up in a small town to get like those small town values. Knew a lot of great people in the state of Iowa. But looking back on it, there's just a lot out there in the world that goes beyond small town Iowa. But nonetheless, very grateful that I did grow up in a small town.
So I grew up in St. Louis, and so
Okay.
large city. And then after college, I moved to a smaller part. I wouldn't say
Okay.
smaller, Columbia, where Mizzou is and everything for Missouri, which is
Yeah.
a lot smaller. And everyone I met in Columbia, it's like they've lived there their whole entire lives.
Yep.
It's not a lot of people. The people that come from outside are usually going there for school. It's not like me where came from a larger town in St. Louis and now I'm
Yeah,
coming
yeah.
to work. So it's almost like you went kind of the reverse way of me, where you got to experience the larger cities and kind of
Mm,
experience a lot more, where I kind of experienced the opposite, where I'm going into
interesting.
that small kind of atmosphere and kind of understand the whole community aspect of a small area.
Yeah, I'm curious, like, how did that, like, kind of, I mean, from my perspective, it's like looking back and it's like, oh my God, like, I always wish I grew up in like a larger city. Like, there's better schools, there's more things to do, like a Top Golf, like that would be like unheard of in like a Clear Lake. I'm like curious, like, how did that perspective going from a smaller or a bigger town going to a smaller town, like, how do you take that?
I had to really get to know the people around me because you kind
Mm,
of rely on them in a
yeah,
way. So it forced me to kind of get stronger in interpersonal skills where I'm introducing myself to everyone because
yeah,
you never know who can help you in those
for
areas.
sure.
And especially with the people I worked with, you I had my manager lived nearby. She introduced me to people to get to know that were from that town. So it kind
Yeah.
of helped me. And now moving back to a larger town in St. Louis, it's like you still utilize those skills. You just do it in a different way.
For sure. Yeah, I feel like that was my biggest thing when I moved away from Iowa. I felt like my personal development like really took off in like a whole new area because my whole family's based in Iowa. So I was on an island when I first moved out to Boston. Like didn't know anybody when I moved out there. I never even visited before I moved out there. And it really does like kind of change your mind in a few different ways. And yeah, you have to figure out a lot of stuff. But like you said, like your interpersonal skills, like your discipline, just like leadership, like all that will you will see benefits of it if you do move out of like your hometown into somewhere different, bigger or smaller.
As you're growing up, did you have anyone that was a big inspiration for you or a big motivator in your life?
Um, Growing up, I would say just a lot of like my football coaches, they were huge inspirations for me. They just like they were great coaches, but they were like great people as well, and like great fathers, like just like great men. So growing up in high school, like definitely my football coaches come to mind and like my parents, of course, like they definitely paved the road for me and like they kind of taught me about entrepreneurship. They showed me like ways like, oh, you can like be your own boss, you can create your own schedule. And just kind of like building like my dad's a huge like he's built like a few houses.
Wow.
Just like yeah, it's pretty crazy. So very fortunate for like those coaches growing up and have parents and whatnot. I would say in college, my biggest role model, I read Steve Jobs by Walter Isaacson. And while Steve Jobs was passed away, like that book, like just changed my perspective about like what could be accomplished in the world and like how truly like big this world is. And so Steve Jobs has been like a huge inspiration for me, like ever since. That's an Apple poster right there with a quote that he has. So yeah, he's been a huge inspiration for me, like even to this day.
As we talk later in the episode about your entrepreneurial journey, sometimes we're asked that fun question, what is that dream job? When you were growing
Yeah.
up, what was that dream job for you?
That's oh man. Growing up, I actually always thought I was going to be a teacher. I don't know if I would say my dream job would be like a football player, like NFL football player, of course. But growing up, I actually went to school to be a teacher. So I went through all of freshman year with the intentions to be a teacher. End of freshman year in college, I was like, I don't know if this is really for me. And just kind of some things led to me pivoting to business, entrepreneurship, marketing, all that good stuff. But I'd say dream job growing up was probably an NFL player. What I wanted to be was a teacher, but what I ended up to be was someone that has their own business.
What specifically about being a teacher caught your eye, and was it a subject or kind of what it entailed?
Yeah. I would say just kind of like you could really make an impact as a teacher. And like I always advocate, like teachers are definitely undervalued and underpaid in like every
Yeah.
school system. And so one of my football coaches was actually, he was my like social studies teacher. They're always social studies teachers, I feel like, but he was my social studies teacher and he was awesome. Like he generally was like probably someone I looked up to so much growing like my junior and senior year when he got to Clear Lake. So he really made me want to be a teacher. And I was like, yes, like I want to impact like lives, like how you've impacted me type of thing. So, yeah, just the impact that you can really have on kids' lives.
What was the big thing that kind of turned you off from teaching as you made that switch to the business side?
Yeah, I would say I just didn't structure to me is like structure from a higher person is like kind of hard for me to like take orders from like people. And it was just like, I feel like teaching was a lot of like, oh, you have to take orders. Like you
Mhm.
don't have a lot of freedom in your schedule and your work, like who you work with. Like you're assigned like 25 kids like every 45 minutes. Like you don't get to choose like who you work with. And it just wasn't going to be for me. I definitely, sometimes I regret like, oh gosh, like I actually like could impact so many lives and stuff. But for me, like having the freedom to like work where I want, like when I want, on whatever time schedule, like that's like that has always been like one of the most valuable things for me.
Being at the University of Iowa, did it kind of found new things that you enjoy doing, different passion projects, anything from a
Yeah.
personal standpoint?
Um, at the University of Iowa, something that I was involved with was Special Olympics. I was involved with Special Olympics for 4 years there, and that was like a life-changing experience for me. I was able to travel to Wichita, Kansas for a national tournament. We were playing teams like Eastern Washington was there, Florida State was there, Oregon was there. So Special Olympics was a life-changing experience for me, just in the sense of these are people with like cognitive disabilities, and it really makes you like it really makes you feel, I don't know, it gives you a new perspective on life, on like how people could like approach situations, or why we should show so much empathy as like a leader. So that was probably the best experience I had at the University of Iowa was Unified Special Olympics. I met so many great people, from like the athletes to just other volunteers that I'm still like very close with. So yeah, that was definitely one of the most life-changing experiences at the University of Iowa.
I love that you mentioned that because the philanthropy part of the
Yeah.
college experience for me was such a big part because I was in a
Oh
fraternity
yeah.
and I was philanthropy chair. So I'm
Yeah.
the one that's putting on events, working with the organization. So we did a lot with ALS, we did stuff with
Yeah.
Make-A-Wish. And to me, it going to the people with ALS's houses and just taking
That's
an
cool.
hour to 2 hours a day to help them with anything they need around the house meant a lot to me. And I think some of my brothers, and I can admit because I saw it,
Yeah.
they didn't appreciate what they were doing. And I think
Mm.
you look at it where you're given this opportunity to live out and do what you want to do. And these people are battling through a condition that
Yeah.
doesn't give them that opportunity. And they're appreciating us coming to their house. They don't know who any of us are. They just
Yeah.
saw a name, we introduced ourselves. But when you mentioned the Special Olympics part, it just means so much because
Yeah.
that's what I think a lot of college kids need to do, especially the ones that are at these universities that
Mhm.
are high tier, top like costing that
Yeah.
families are paying. It's like go out there and help because
Yeah.
you'll appreciate the gifts you have that a lot of people don't have.
That's a great way to sum it up. I remember like very clearly, like I was walking down, it was like one of like the sidewalks in between a bunch of buildings when I got an email my freshman year. This was like September 2017. And I remember just getting an email like, oh, like we're launching a new unified sports league. Like, do you want to sign up type of thing? It was like a blanketed email. I was like, this is like such a cool opportunity. I get to play like flag football with like Special Olympic athletes. And it, like looking back on it, that was definitely the most life changing thing I did at the University of Iowa. There is something so special about giving back, and like you said, it really makes you not take this life for granted. It makes you appreciate it a whole lot more.
We're going to pivot to a different direction before we
Yeah.
get really into the entrepreneur journey. Before we met, we found out that we're both type 1 diabetics. And I
Yes.
always love interviewing type 1 diabetics because it's something that listeners can really see how our stories can be compared or
Yeah.
completely opposite in the journeys that we've been on. So I want
Yeah.
to go into the pre-diabetes story. When did
Yeah.
it happen and what was going on before the diagnosis?
Yeah, it's a great question. So before the diagnosis, I got diagnosed about 14 years ago, May 14th, 2010. So we'll kind of cover the years before that. So like what I remember, but kind of leading up to being like actually diagnosed, I was in fifth grade. I was probably like 160 pounds, standing at like 5'4", whatever, 5'5", something like that, maybe even 5'2". So I was a very chunky kid growing up. But then in around December, like 2009, January 2010, February 2010, I started to get like super sick where like my body was rejecting everything. Like I would eat, I would throw up. I'd use the restroom like 3 or 4 times in the middle of the night. I'm sure you experienced that as well.
Yep.
And over the course of about 4 months, I actually went from 160 down all the way down to 110. So I lost about 50
Oh,
pounds. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I could not eat anything, like literally anything. So I lost about 50 pounds in about 4 to 5 months. I was probably puking once or twice a day. Horrible
yeah.
time to like actually look back on that. But I remember the day of, it was May 14th, 2010, as I mentioned. I was having like honeycomb. I clearly remember this honeycomb. I had like one bite of it, and I was just like, I can't eat this. I went to the bathroom to like shower, like turn on the shower head, and I just had to like puke and like just vomited. And that's when it was like, okay, we actually need to like take you to the hospital. This has gone on for way too long. So parents took me to the hospital. Next thing you know, I am diagnosed with type 1 diabetes.
What a
So
story. What a
yeah,
story.
yeah, yeah, that is the most life-changing thing that has happened to me.
Did anyone like family notice symptoms? I guess you didn't go to the doctor until that last moment,
Yeah.
but was there ever a like thinking, what could this have been during that time, those months?
I reflect on that a lot. Like how are the signs not clear a lot earlier in like that January or February timeframe? But like my parents did like what they did like with the resources and the knowledge that they had, so I never will hold that against them. But in the back, like sometimes it's like, oh, like why was I not taking the hospital or like a lot earlier? Like what took me to lose 50 pounds in 5 months or 4 months? But that was just not, it is, I do think about that sometimes, like why was I not taking the hospital earlier? But I made it out alive to live the story, so I do not hold that against anybody.
I had the sign of I was always thirsty, but I was playing
Yeah,
sports and I
same.
was always drinking lots of water no matter what
Yeah.
time it is. So that idea, I think, to my parents were like, oh, he's just dehydrated or something.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I go into the hospital with bacterial meningitis because my eye is almost swollen shut. Half my face looks like I had a stroke
Wow.
and I had to get fluids. And so in a hospital for a week, and they're like, oh, yeah, you have diabetes. I'm like, might as well give me more news. I'm already
Yeah,
here
yeah.
anyway. So it's like just shocking because at our ages, because I was in sixth grade at the time that
Okay.
it's like we're not thinking about that. Like
No.
I'm like a week before I'm chugging Mountain Dews and stuff. So
Yeah.
it's like I'm not even thinking about, oh, my life's gonna change. When you got the diagnosis, what was, if you remember, what was going through your mind? Like, oh, are things gonna change? What am I gonna be able to do? Am I gonna be able to still live that normal kid life?
Yeah. Honestly, I remember it very clearly, like sitting in that room with the doctor. Like this is something like you don't like really forget. I'm sure the same, like you have a
Yeah.
very vivid memory as well. Like I remember sitting in the doctor's office, my family doctor. Like he's known my mom for like 30 years, 40 years. I remember just saying like just very like cut, like, yeah, he has type 1 diabetes. And I remember my mom started crying and I'm sitting there, I'm just like, I have no idea what that means. What does that mean? And they're like, we have to take you to the ER and like you're gonna stay here for a few days. And I remember just like being wheelchaired out of there. I have a very distinct memory too of seeing like an old lady as I was like being wheeled out, trying to give me like some sort of like smile. I don't know. That's a kind of crazy memory to think about, but yeah, I don't. At the time, I had no idea what that meant. But I would soon learn through a lot of education and a lot of finger pricks, a lot of shots in my stomach, what that would actually end up meaning. So at the time, though, I had no idea. I'm sure. Yeah, did you?
I had no clue what was going to happen.
Yeah,
Thinking, oh God, what am I going to have to change? I mean,
yeah,
when they're telling you what you, I mean, I love the whole, well, you can't eat this. Well, at the time in my mind, I'm like, well, can I eat this? And
yeah,
now as I'm older, it's like I understand a lot more. And just saying, like, you have to like take care of yourself. And I
yeah,
was probably the most rebellious diabetic ever. And my
yeah,
parents
yeah.
will agree with
We
that.
all are.
I mean, I challenge the system so much.
Yeah.
What do you think was the challenging part for you? Let's go into that high school days because
Yeah.
that's really the part where you're kind of like getting older. You're kind of
Yeah.
figuring out what direction you want to go. Do I want to play sports? Do I want to go
Yeah.
in a certain field? How did that play an effect with diabetes?
Yeah, that is like a great question. So I was an awful diabetic probably for about like 6 or 7 years, like no joke. Like I asked you what your A1C was before the episode. I swear I was at an A1C of like 11 or 12 for like three or
That was
four
me.
years.
Yep.
Yeah, and like I'm in seventh grade and eighth grade. I remember going to the doctor's office one time. My A1C was like 12, let's say. And the
Oh,
doctor was so stern with me. He's like, "Do you know how many carbs are in a piece of bread?" And he's like digging into me. I'm in like seventh grade. I'm like this is. I was so taken back. We ended up not going to that doctor anymore. But I would say how that played a part, it was just something that I didn't take seriously until like sophomore year of college, really. So I lived with diabetes for what would that be? About 7 or 8 years. Basically, just like I wouldn't eat like sugary foods like candies or like pop and everything, but like I really did like not take care of my body that well for those 7 or 8 years. And part of it was because I wasn't on like a pump, which like gives you insulin automatically. Like I was having to prick my fingers, take shots every time I wanted insulin. So like a lot of my sports, I remember like I was so afraid of getting a low blood sugar that I would walk into like a basketball game or a football game with a blood sugar of like 400, just so I would not get low. Yeah, that's how I played every single game in high school, which is crazy to think about. Like I'd be chugging like an orange juice just before the game, just so my blood sugar wouldn't get low. And I just didn't have the education to like really understand like what that impact is and like why you should not do that.
yeah.
So it never yeah, I just was for 7 or 8 years. I just like was not good with it at all.
With college, that's the time where really drugs, alcohol,
Yeah,
you're kind of living on your own.
for
Did that
sure.
challenge you also? Because for me, I kind of avoided it and like
Yeah.
really didn't test it. But then I kind of look back and I'm like, was I too strict on myself for being that way? Or was it kind of a blessing because what could have happened to me?
Yeah. That's a great way to frame it. I think it's more of like a blessing, like what could have happened to me. Yeah, so freshman year, I was a typical freshman. Like I would drink a lot and like partied a lot. So, and I still wasn't on a CGM. So I was still in my old ways of like not really checking my blood sugar. Like I would take shots every time I ate, but like just kind of like taking shots. Like I wasn't like actually calculating it. Um, so yeah, freshman year was tough. I don't remember what my A1C was around that time, but I remember it was just it was I was just going down a path where like Ryan, like you have to start taking care of yourself. So after freshman year, I remember going to my endocrinologist and they're like you have to get on a pump. There's no option anymore. You have to get on a pump. We're putting you on a pump. And that was like the shove I really needed. Because then they put me on the pump, like a CGM, and that like really changed my perspective of understanding like, oh, this is how this food impacts me. Like I can't eat this, or like I actually need to get my blood sugar down. It gave me way more peace of mind that I'm not going to get a low blood sugar when I'm working out, or I'm not going to get a low blood sugar when I go for a walk. And if I do, I have sugar tablets on me to correct that. So freshman year was a little bit of like still old ways, but once I did get that CGM and the pump, that really was life changing.
Currently, how has it been a big teaching moment for you? What has
Yeah.
this journey so far with diabetes been for you where you are
Yeah.
today?
Yeah. So I actually look at diabetes now as like a blessing and a curse. Start with the curse part. Like the curse is like you have type 1 diabetes. There's
Yeah.
there's no way around that. Like this is a chronic disease you're gonna have for the rest of your life. It'll impact you until the day you die. There's no lying about that. The blessing for me that I view it as is like it really makes me a disciplined person in like how I sleep, the food that I take, my exercise that I get. Like I'm very cautious now of like the carbs that I consume, like making sure I take enough insulin because I know the long-term effects. If I actually don't take care of myself, like I could lose a hand, I could lose a foot,
Yep.
I could lose my vision. That's my biggest fear in the world. So the blessing for me has just been like how disciplined it has made me as a person to eat healthy, sleep right, get enough exercise, stay hydrated, and really take care of my body.
With diabetes, it's been one of those journeys that you've been on, especially comparing to your entrepreneurial journey, which is
Yeah,
a easy slope to the top.
for
What has
sure.
that been like for you? How did it start? What was the idea? What was the
Yeah.
big momentum for you?
Yeah. So my entrepreneurial journey started really, I want to say like the roots were really planted after that Steve Jobs book, where like, oh my God, like he like really changed the world. Like I want to go change the world type of thing. So, and one way I wanted to change the world was connecting with other entrepreneurs. I knew I wanted to start my own company, but I was like, yeah, I don't really know what I want to do. I just want to connect with people. So in August of 2020, I actually started my own podcast. I was just going into senior year of college. It was called The Business Cloud, where I interviewed entrepreneurs and executives to hear about their stories. So that was like my first like entrepreneurial venture where like I was taking project managing it, doing the content creation, doing the interviews, doing the guest outreach, all that good stuff that, that comes with the
Yep.
podcast. My first monetized entrepreneurial gig is what I'm currently doing. And that started about a year and a half ago where I met my co-founder on Twitter. We met it on Twitter, hit it off, and basically we co-founded Spacebar Visuals, which is an animated video studio where we create videos for top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel. So worked on that for the side as my full-time gig about a year ago for about a year. And then 3 months ago, I left my full-time gig to run Spacebar Visuals full-time. So that is where we are today.
Was it hard working a full-time job plus doing the podcast plus doing the monetization with Spacebar?
Yes, no shortchanging this. Like, yes, it was very hard. I'm managing like so many different. I'm managing a podcast on the side. I'm managing Spacebar Visuals on the side. I'm managing a full-time gig as well. So yeah, I was juggling a lot for about a year. Like my days were 10, 11, 12-hour days, like every single day.
Wow.
But that, I mean, that teaches you time management skills, project management skills, staying organized, being able to get into deep work. So I would not change it for the world. It was very taxing on my mind, but yeah, I would not have changed that experience for the world to be doing all that at once.
Sometimes the big entrepreneurs out there, we hear that you have to go all in on that idea that you have to really know, are you committed to it?
Yeah,
There a part of you that did not want to do that. And that's why you had to have that full-time gig because you had to come up with income coming in.
yeah,
Podcasting, unless you're big, you're not making money. And
yeah.
business wasn't really making money to start out with. So was that the main focus was I can't just sacrifice my life for this and put
Yeah.
all my eggs in this basket?
Yeah, and I would advise anyone that's starting their own company, do not just quit your job and start a company. Definitely work on it on the side. And I feel like that was one of like the biggest things that I would recommend anyone to do. So I didn't go all in at first just because I wanted to live, I wanted to eat, I wanted to breathe, I wanted to pay for my diabetes supplies. But it did get to a point in August where I was like, like I've been wanting to do this entrepreneurship thing for a long time. So I laid out a plan, basically like 5 variables that I needed to hit. October came around, hit them, and I was like, you know what? Like it's time to quit my job. So my income was replaced fully. And yeah, I've definitely felt comfortable to be able to dive 2 feet into Spacebar Visuals. And yeah, now I am all in on Spacebar Visuals. And yeah, it's a heck of a team we have, heck of a products we're building, videos we're building. So yeah, definitely no regrets. It's best decision of my life.
Who is your biggest competitor with Spacebar Visuals? If someone that's listening to this that maybe doesn't understand exactly what your market strategy is or who
Yeah.
customers are, what would it be compared to that people would know?
Yeah, so there's a lot of like video marketing agencies out there. Like we aren't reinventing the wheel here, but we are doing it better than anyone else, I will say. But yeah, there's a bunch. Like if you Google video marketing agency, a bunch will come up. Like Explainly is one that comes up. And there's just a bunch of others. If you just do a quick Google search, they'll come up. But yeah, if you think of videos, product demos you've seen on the internet, explainer videos, animated videos. Those are exactly what we do.
You mentioned earlier that you didn't like when someone ordered you around, but you're in the position that you are where you're kind of now doing the opposite.
For
When
sure.
you're being that leader, that boss, are you having the same mindset of when you were not liking taking orders to how you tell your employees what needs to happen in a way that if you were in their position, it's more comforting that it's like, okay,
Yeah.
boss means business. We need to hit these goals, then kind of like being forceful in a way.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great question. I can give an example on that. So we just recently hired a BDR to lead like a lot of our sales strategies. And one way that like we just got aligned is like what do you want to do long term? It's understanding their long term goals and then kind of twisting your leadership style to fit with those long-term goals. So his name's Cody. He's a beast. But essentially his long-term goals is to like start his own company. And so when I'm like kind of like giving him not or like kind of leading him in the direction he needs to go, it's like when we talk about like I'll have a conversation with him. It's like about cold calling. It's like when you start your own company someday, like cold calling and sales is like one of the most vital tasks. And like here's something that I would do that may help you. Obviously you do what you want, but here's kind of what I would recommend you do. So I definitely give our team like room to like do what they want. I will give them a very large box to work out of and let them do like their work. But yeah, I definitely am cognizant of that, but it all comes down to aligning like their long-term goals with your leadership like style for that person. I think that's a super important skill. If you don't know what they want long-term, you're not gonna be able to talk about their interests or talk about like how they can get to where they're gonna want to go.
Do you have a big goal that you're hoping to accomplish with Spacebar in the next few years?
Yeah, I think our end goal, we had an offsite in December about what we want to do. We definitely want to sell this within 5 years. That is our end goal, to someone bigger that's needs us, that wants us. So yeah, that is our end goal in 5 years. We'll definitely get there. We, like I said, we have an awesome team. I'm so proud of the team that we put together. They're fun to work with. They're all awesome. So from our video editors to our voiceover actors to our BDRs, ops, co-founders, like it is like truly an awesome team. It's so much fun to work with them.
If you do sell it, are you hoping to stay on it, or does this give you the opportunity to start a new company or a new idea
Yeah.
in the works?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have thought that far, I will say. But essentially, if we sell it, I definitely make it a smooth transition for the next person, make sure that they're successful, set them up for success. But my dream would be to actually like take like 6 months off and just kind of travel the world. One day I do want to start a company within the diabetic space. Not sure what yet, something maybe with like big data when it comes to like CGMs and whatnot. I don't have that idea yet, but I'm focused on Spacebar Visual until we sell it, making a smooth handoff, making sure the next person is successful with Spacebar Visuals, and then taking time off to travel the world and kind of dive into the next thing.
You talked earlier how you went from Iowa to Boston and now currently in Austin, Texas. What are some things that people may not know that you would like doing when you're not working? And I mean, if you say working is fun to you, that's totally fine.
Yeah.
What are some other items that you enjoy doing that maybe people don't know about Austin area or
Yeah.
haven't shared?
I only like to work. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
Hey, I mean, that's some people now.
I'm totally kidding. I'm totally kidding. I'm definitely, and that's part of my leadership style too. Like when you're not working, do not work. Like
Yeah.
do not do that. Like take your time and do what you want to do. But what I do to like recharge is I love, like I said earlier in the episode, I love doing anything outside. So there's an awesome boardwalk here where I'll walk there like weekly on Sundays. Going back to it, like anything outside, anything active, there's nothing better than like a morning sweat. So I do CrossFit. I'm in basketball. I'm in a basketball league here, two kickball leagues. So anything, like I said, anything active. I love to read, love to be with friends. I've been getting into cooking as well. So I think that would be the biggest thing where people don't know about me that I love to do is I do enjoy cooking like quite a bit. So those are a few things that I'm very interested in doing.
I don't think you're doing enough though.
Yeah. I need to do more. I agree.
You talked about cooking. What is your kind of that signature dish you're working on or you enjoy cooking?
My favorite dish to cook is definitely a cast iron steak. There is nothing better than cooking your own steak. So I do like a cast iron pan, get one from Amazon for like 30 bucks or so, throw it on the stove top, put some oil in it, heat it up, throw some steaks on there, get a nice little like char on it and whatnot. And yeah, get it to like a perfect 135. It's a good meal for sure.
Do you know how to calculate insulin for that steak now?
Yeah, I do know how to calculate. I do know how to calculate it. Thankfully, steaks are pretty glucose friendly.
Yeah.
But I'll pair that with like a vegetable or something. It's when I throw a potato in there, I get in trouble.
It's like the proteins, easiest stuff for us. And then it's like
Yeah,
start adding all the extras. You're like, oh crap, now I
this
gotta
is where it
start
gets
thinking.
hard.
Oh, you talked about CrossFit and when fitness diabetes is something that plays a lot with
Yeah.
people with diabetes. How have that been rewarding for you?
Yeah, I mean, fitness is like something that's always been like a huge part of my life. High school, I would have to lift like 5 times a week, like every morning. So that has been like hardwired in my brain to work out in the mornings. But joining like a CrossFit community, I'm new to it. I'm probably like a month in, but it is just like surrounding yourself with people that are like so driven and in such better shape than you. It's like super inspirational to go in there every week. And like kind of walk in, you're like, oh, like I'm in super good shape. Like I'm really, really ready for this. And then some guys are just like kicking your butt good. And it's just like that mental toughness thing as well. Is like, oh, like you have to approach it like I am getting better. Like I'm not where I want to be, but it is a process and I will get to where I want to be. So yeah, that's been one of the biggest things with CrossFit for me and like why I've enjoyed it.
You talked about traveling. If you were able to drop everything or sell it,
Yeah,
go travel, where's that first destination you're going to?
that's a good question. I don't know. It'll depend. Honestly, if it's in 5 years, it'll probably be in Antarctica. I have a goal
Okay.
to go to Antarctica before 35. So I got about 10 years or so. But yeah, I've been to Japan, I've been to Switzerland, France, like a bunch of EU countries. But next on my trip will be India. I'm super excited for India, Germany as well. But yeah, in 5 years, if I sell my company, I get to take time off. I am going to Antarctica.
You're like, let's go from the hot weather to the freezing cold
To
right
the freezing cold.
now.
I think Antarctica would be so cool to see. And I'm a huge penguin fan, so seeing a bunch of wild penguins would melt my heart.
The final question I'll ask you for someone that's listening to this interview based
Yeah.
on your journey and experience, what tips or advice would you give them to overcome obstacles, accomplish their goals, and rise to the challenge?
Yeah, I would say one thing that has helped me in like all my personal development and like getting to where I want to be is writing down like writing down your goals each month. And then before you go to bed each day or each night, I should say, writing down like it's called an ESP, effort, success, progress. How did you put effort towards that goal today? What was the success you've had towards that goal today? And what progress did you make towards that goal? And then under that, writing like an affirmation about it, like, oh, I take confidence each day to achieve XYZ in revenue. And once I'm done with that, I'll always write out like, it's acronym like CAD, like I am confident, I take action, I am disciplined. That if someone commits to that for 30 days, I think you would actually make a ton of progress on your goals and you would notice the difference in yourself. So if you're looking to rise to the challenge and overcome that challenge, I would definitely recommend doing that.
Ryan, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and talking about your rise to the challenge. You're inspiring so many people, and we are excited to see what the future looks like for you.
Awesome. You're the best, Alex. Thank you so much for having me.
Tune in next time to hear my next guest talk about their rise to the challenge. Remember to follow, subscribe on all major audio platforms, and make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to get full length episode in video format. What path do you take to accomplish your goals? You decide.